Hello, and welcome to Gray Cap Knits. Today I'll be showing you how to work a folded bind off for the collar of a sweater. And this is a great example here. A folded bind off is when you knit a rib twice as long as what you actually want your collar to be. Then you fold it in half inwards and you bind off along the bottom of the rib. And this works great for cable knit sweaters because they have a lot of structure and it just gives you a nice fluffy little rib that won't, or a nice fluffy little collar that won't distort or lose its shape. Alrighty. So here I have a little sample. We're just going to pretend that this little patch of stockinette is the body of the sweater, obviously much shorter than a body would be. And this is our collar. Now there are two ways that you can work a folded bind off. One is stretchy and one is rigid. So first I'm going to show you the stretchy method, as I think that's what most people are inclined to use. Stretchy is great because it helps you get the sweater over your head. It's flexible, but there's good use for rigid too. It depends on your neckline. For example, if you have a wider neckline that you don't want to grow and it already fits over your head perfectly, you may prefer to use the rigid version. All right, so when I do this bind off, I like to flip my sweaters inside out and upside down so that the body isn't in the way. So it would look something like this. The inside of your sweater would be facing you and it would be upside down so the body falls this way and the collar is up in your working space. Basically, what we're going to do is a kind of version of a 3-needle bind off, except without the third needle. We're going to fold our collar in half and we're going to pick up stitches from the base of each column. Now it can be easy to get off a column or two and then you'll end up with a diagonal collar. So do be careful to make sure that you are actually picking up the stitch from the base of the column. So as you can see in the middle here, let's use this one for an example. On the right side, this stitch is a knit, which means on the wrong side it will be a purl. So if you flip it upside down, you can see that this purl column in between is where you'll want to be picking up that stitch from. So you'll want to pick up a stitch from right down here. All right, so here we go. Again, this is to knit the stretchy version. So what I do is I trace my way down to the bottom of the column. With my left-hand needle, I pick up my matching stitch. Usually you'll be doing this in the round, not flat, so you won't have to use an edge stitch like this, but you can also work this flat and then seam it together. That's fine too. All right, so now we have an extra stitch here. What we're going to do is we're going to knit. Oops, it looks like I picked up more than one. There we go. We're going to knit these two stitches together. Now we'll do the same thing. We've got a little purl bump here, so we'll be looking for a knit column on the inside. We'll pick up a stitch from the base of that column. And then we'll knit those two together. Now this is the part that makes it the stretchy bind off. Once you have 2 stitches on your right hand needle, you'll insert your left needle and then you'll knit those 2 stitches together. Now you just have 1 stitch on your right hand needle. So again, to move on, we're going to trace this column down to its base. We're going to pick up a stitch from its base. We're going to knit those 2 together. Now we have 2 stitches on our right needle. We'll slide our left needle in purlwise and we'll knit those 2 stitches together. And now again, we only have 1 stitch on our right hand needle. Once more, trace our way to the bottom of this column. Pick up a stitch, knit those 2 stitches together, insert left needle purlwise, and knit those 2 stitches together to bind off. And as you can see, we're starting to get this nice little braided effect that looks similar to a regular bind off, except that it'll be stretchy because we're knitting those last 2 stitches together instead of just passing the stitch over. So let me show you how to work a few more, and then we'll switch over to the rigid version. So again, there's our stitch. We're going to trace to the bottom of the column. We'll pick up a stitch from the bottom of the column. We'll knit it together with the top of the column. Then we'll insert our left needle purlwise to the 2 stitches on the right needle and knit those 2 together. So I'll just continue on for a few stitches here. Generally, I go for this stretchy method because I hate feeling trapped in my sweaters. I like to be able to get them off and over my head. But again, if you're using a wider neckline, a more rigid method might work for you. All right, and now to show you the rigid version. We don't have to change anything about the setup, so I'm just going to go straight into it, but obviously when you choose which version you're going to use, you would keep it consistent. You wouldn't want to switch back and forth between the two. All right, so for the rigid version, we do the same thing. We take our stitch, we trace our way down to the bottom of the column, we pick up a stitch, we knit it together with the stitch from the top of the column. Now the difference is that here, instead of knitting these 2 stitches together, we're going to take the second stitch on the needle and pass it over the first stitch on the needle, just like a regular bind off. So again, find the top of the column, trace our way down to the bottom of the column, knit those 2 together, but then we'll use our left needle to pass the second stitch over the first. So basically those stitches that are bound off by passing the second stitch over the first are not going to stretch. They're not going to move. They're only going to stretch as loosely as you bind off. As you can see with these 3 stitches here, they don't really have any give. Whereas the stitches that we worked earlier, where they're knit together, they have quite a bit of give. And that allows you to pull a sweater over your head. But again, there's a time and a place for each different version, and which one you use is totally up to you. Alrighty, so once more, we look at the stitch at the top of our column, we trace our way down to the bottom of our column, pick up a stitch, and knit it together with the top of the column. Then for the rigid version, you would take that second stitch with your left-hand needle and pass it over the first stitch. And then you would just continue working whichever version you chose all the way to the end. And once you reach the end, you can just break your yarn and secure that end. And there you have it, a nice, neat folded collar.